I began Roots and Shoots in 1991 because I met so many young people as I was traveling around the world lecturing who seemed to have little hope for the future. And some were deeply depressed, some were angry, even violent, and most were just apathetic. And so I talked to them and they all said to me, we feel like this because we feel you adult generations have compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. And we have. When I think how we've harmed the planet since I was their age, I feel a kind of desperation. But is it too late? I don't think so, if we can change attitudes. So every group of young people, Roots and Shoots, around the world, now in 143 countries, they all choose 3 projects to make the world a better place, to help people, to help animals, to help the environment. Main message, every single individual makes a difference every single day, and we have a choice. I ask people to imagine a big tree, and then to think when it began to germinate, from this little seed, small roots appeared and a little shoot, and you can pick it up and it seems so frail and so weak. But there's a magic, a life force so powerful in that seed that those little roots to reach the water can work through rocks and eventually push them aside, and that little shoot to reach the sunlight can work through cracks in a brick wall and eventually knock it down. So the rocks and the walls are all the problems we inflict on this planet, environmental and social. And Roots and Shoots is about hope. Hundreds and thousands of young people around the world can break through and make this a better world for all living things. I think one of the problems today is that we've lost the wisdom that so many indigenous people used to have, and that is make a decision now based on how will this decision affect our people generations ahead. And now it's how will it affect me now, or the next shareholders meeting, or my next political campaign. And it seems that there has been a disconnect between this very clever brain, and we are the most intellectual species to ever have walked this planet, and to use poetic terms, the heart, the love and compassion. And if there's a disconnect between the head and the heart, I don't believe humans will ever achieve their true potential. We need to act with head and heart together. I think there are 3 major problems on the planet today, and first of these is crippling poverty. Because when you're really poor, you cut down the last trees in your desperate effort to grow food or to make charcoal to sell. Or if you're living in the city, you buy the very cheapest things which may have been made in a very environmentally damaging way. The second great problem is the unsustainable lifestyles of most of the rest of us. Almost all of us have more than we need. And the third problem is the continually growing human populations. There are just so many of us. And I saw this when I flew over Gombe National Park, where the chimpanzees are, that I've been studying for over 50 years. It was all forest along the shores of Lake Tanganyika. I looked down from my plane, I saw a little island of beautiful forest, untouched, and outside the tiny national park, bare hills, completely bare hills, all the forest gone. And it was obvious there were more people living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere. And the result was like looking at the Dust Bowl. I actually think that there is around the world, there's a greater awareness of the fact that there really are terrible problems in the world today. Climate change is just one of them. There's the terrible pollution of air, water and land, the destruction of the forest, the release of CO2 into the atmosphere. the fact that the ocean is getting polluted and can no longer absorb CO2 in some places. And so we're in a mess. And as people become more aware, I think the reason that they're not doing anything about it is because they feel completely helpless. And if you look at the problems of the world as an individual, you do feel helpless. And we have a saying, and I think it's all over Europe, think globally, act locally. But that's wrong, because if we think globally, we have absolutely no energy or will to act locally, because what's the point? But if you start off acting locally, and that is the whole rationale behind our youth program, get the young people to understand the problems, empower them to take action, and let's clean up the stream. Okay, we'll get a few other groups locally to help us. You clean up the stream, you reintroduce fish to it. And then you realize that in 134 countries now around the world, there are young people just like you in Roots and Shoots groups doing the same thing. And suddenly, the future looks brighter. We can make a difference. We do our bit here. And a million little pieces sewn together around the world makes big change. It seems that we're living in the middle of the 6th great extinction. We're losing species every day, sometimes locally, sometimes absolutely extinct forever, like the dodo. And very often people say to me, but if this little insect disappears, surely it doesn't make any difference, does it matter? And the thing is that everything is interconnected, and that little insect might be the major food source of some other creature, who then might disappear as well. And so it goes on with this interrelationship. We call it biodiversity. I like to call it the web of life, all the strands forming a beautiful pattern. And that pattern is being destroyed. We have to change attitudes. We have to make people understand that we cannot continue to destroy the planet and life forms in this way, because in the end we shall destroy our own future. We're using the resources of this planet, the timber, the minerals, the oil, and so forth, as though they are going to go on forever. They're not. They're finite. They will come to an end. We all know that burning fossil fuel recklessly is increasing the greenhouse gases with CO2. And there's another gas which is even more potent than CO2 up there in those gases, and that's methane gas. And this is formed in various ways. There's a lot of it under the permafrost, which will be released when the permafrost begins to melt. Something which people don't really appreciate, and many people don't want to appreciate, is that another cause for the production of methane is the digestive processes of animals, including us. And today, as more people get rich in the developing world, they eat more and more meat. The result of this passion for eating more and more meat is intensive farming, these factory farms. And from my perspective, the suffering of the animals is enough to stop me eating meat. But it's not just the suffering of animals that we need to be concerned about. To feed all these livestock, huge areas of forest are cut down to grow grain or to graze cattle. And I've seen it happening with my own eyes. I've seen it happening in Latin America. I go to forest 1 year, 2 years later, the forest has gone and there's just cows grazing everywhere. And there's another problem too. To keep these animals alive in these horrible conditions, they're fed antibiotics regularly. And that means the antibiotics get out in the environment and the bacteria build up resistance. People have already died from a simple cut on the finger. So whether you care about animal suffering, the destruction of the environment, climate change, or your own health, eating a lot of meat is a bad thing to do. Unquestionably, my greatest reason for hope is this energy, commitment, dedication of young people. Once they understand the problems and are empowered to take action. That is incredibly uplifting and empowering for me. Secondly, there is this brain, and the biggest difference between us and chimpanzees, our closest relatives, and any other animal is the explosive development of the human intellect. Yes, chimpanzees and other animals are highly intelligent, much more so than used to be thought, but it doesn't make sense to compare even the brightest of them with a creature that has actually created a rocket that's gone all the way up to the red planet, has opened out, a little robot has emerged, and that is still, several years later, crawling about on the surface of Mars and sending back pictures for us to look at, which makes it absurd that we're destroying the planet. It really does, because we have the brains to see what we're doing. But at the same time, as more and more people begin to understand what we are doing, amazing new technologies are being developed that will enable us to live in greater harmony. And just as important, we as individuals are thinking about how we can live our own lives in an as environmentally friendly way as possible. Another reason for hope, a very powerful one, is the resilience of nature. We can destroy a beautiful area, but with time, perhaps with some help, perhaps with some money, that place can once again support life. It may never be exactly as it was, but it can be pretty close, because seeds lie dormant in the ground. We've seen it happen around Gombe. Those completely bare hills of the early 90s now have 30-foot trees because people have left land to regenerate. And animal species on the very brink of extinction can be given another chance. Lastly, the indomitable human spirit, the people who tackle seemingly impossible tasks and won't give up. And one of my icons, Nelson Mandela, it's strange to think of the world without him. But there are other indomitable spirits, and they're all around us, people who cope with tremendous physical disadvantages and lead lives that are inspirational. So that may be my greatest reason for hope, along with the fact that with all of these problems all around the world, and I hear about them all, Jane, would you please add this into your lecture? Could you sign this petition? Would you go and talk to this politician? I hear all the problems, but there isn't one where there isn't a group of passionate people really giving their all to try and put that problem right.